out and practice today. Thought we had really good practice. Told the guys afterwards, I was really proud of them. Thought we practiced with a purpose today, and that's a lot different than going out there and going through the motions. And so I think that, I think we're disappointed in the way that game ended Saturday, and I think that we know we got to improve a lot of things, and I think the guys had the right mindset to get it done. So I was really impressed with how they handled it and what they did today. So really encouraged, and thought we were dialed in, and thought the effort was outstanding, and our execution was much improved. So I was good to see that. So, we know what we're going to Iowa State, playing a night game. Traditionally, it's not been an easy place to win. Doesn't really matter who you are, how good that team is. However good Iowa State is, traditionally it's a very difficult game to go win, on the road at night there. And so our guys are getting ready and prepared, and we know we have a lot of work to do this week. And as I said earlier, I think that there's a purpose, to what we're doing, and so I'm encouraged by that.
Coach, you said last week, I think it was, that you trust 7 offensive linemen. How do you grow that number during the season?
Yeah, just reps and play and consistency, and I think that's been one thing that up front, we've had some guys banged up. We played, I think, the same 5 starters for 15 games last year, and we've had a different rotation pretty much every week, and that's hurt us. We just haven't been real consistent in who we got to play with. And I think that's, when you have those, we say it all the time, injuries are not luck. You know what I mean? I think people just assume that that's luck. That's not luck. That's, we're going fast now. As a result of going fast, we're playing a lot of plays in the game. There's a lot of exposures that your offensive line has. We've got to try to play more people. But one bad play by an offensive lineman gets your quarterback out for the year potentially. And so, we just need more guys that we can trust and feel good about. And I think the number's getting there. You go back, it's been, I think since Louisiana Tech, maybe Jordan Mills, since I've had an offensive lineman that started as a true freshman. And Ben Whitfield started last week as a true freshman, and Jordan Mills played a long time in the NFL. So, you've got to try to balance that out, and, when we've got some guys playing some new positions and different positions. And so, long story short, that number has to grow. It has to grow. We've got to be able to play more people, because what's happening is, like I said, you also get more reps in practice. And so, more exposures in practice. And so we just have to figure out how to manage that and get our guys the work that we need, but at the same time, make sure that they're fresh enough to be able to, number one, stay healthy, and number two, play at a high level on Saturday.
Speaking of those offensive linemen, Coach, do you have a status on Brandon?
Yeah, he's playing. Started practice today, looked better than I anticipated. So I was encouraged by that.
Do you think you have a confident team right now?
You know what, I would say not really. You know what I mean? I think the only way to have confidence is to do something. I think that these guys understand, and it's the same thing, it's the same message we said to last year's team. I remember the very first time we got into fall camp, when we had everybody sitting in this room, we said, we have enough talent in this room to go a long way. I think this year's team is the same thing. What defines college football is your ability to win situational football, turnovers, situational football, and those are the two things, and for whatever reason, we have not been particularly good at situational football. And I think part of that goes back to what we just talked about. We've just been unsettled. It's been, musical chairs at wide receiver, been a little bit of musical chairs on the offensive line. I don't know that we have established an identity yet offensively, and we're almost halfway through the season, and that has to happen earlier. At the same time, we scored 21 points in the first half last week against a very good West Virginia defense. So we're certainly capable of really playing well and doing things, and we're also capable of what you saw in the second half, which was 0 points. And so, that's our issue right now, is just consistency. Is when we pass protect, we'll bust a route. When we run the right route, we don't pass protect. When the quarterback gets a little bit antsy in the pocket because he's not getting protection, well, then he has great protection, the guy comes open and he's out of the pocket. I mean, it's just so it's been one of these things where, offensive football is about 11 people working in unison together. And that's the one thing that we don't have yet. And if we can get that, then this can be a really good offense, because we have, I've got a lot of confidence in our players and their ability to be good football players. We just have to be able to put it together. And that's what we're missing. And, we've had chances to kick field goals at the end of these games and we get sacked, and then mess up a pass protection. The other day, we end up kicking a longer field goal, which has a lower trajectory, which probably gets blocked because we gave up a sack on a 3-man rush. Just stuff like that you just look at the entirety of it. I mean, and little things, we run a screen to Monty, and we crack the screen where there's no one there to crack. If the outside receiver releases and runs vertical, the corner chases him, we dump it down to Monty, he walks in the end zone. And so just stuff like that has cost us, and those are mistakes that this team is making that we either covered up for last year. Somebody would make a play last year, and in this year's team, we just haven't been able to overcome those mistakes. Because, you guys know, we're a couple of plays away from being 5-0 and in the top 10. And then we would be sitting here talking about how good we are, which we're really not. But I don't know how good we were last year. You know what I mean? I think we were good enough to make it to the national championship game, but we weren't a dominant football team. And so, we're kind of that same vein this year. We just haven't made plays down the stretch, and we have to figure out a way to do that. You go back and you compare game to game last year. We beat SMU by 7 points. They were about to get the ball. They jumped over our wedge, or we're about to be in a barn burner with those guys. If we didn't get that first down, we're punting and they have a minute to go. We win by 7. We go to Kansas, we pull it out at the end of the game. We go to West Virginia, we get dominated and find a way to win the game. And so, we just, we're not that dissimilar football teams. You know what I mean? And hard for people to say that because you look at the record, but it's really not much different other than last year when we got the ball back at the end of the game, we scored. And this year we haven't.
When he's been healthy, what has Dalen been able to show you guys so far this season?
Well, he showed us a big play capability. I think that's the biggest thing. And again, that's kind of, we've been searching for consistency from that bunch. It's been kind of musical chairs, and lack of practice equals lack of production, lack of confidence. And I think that's why, quite frankly, that none of those guys have really had good games, just because our quarterback is, he's going to throw to the guys that he has success throwing to in practice. And so we're going to get into games, and that's just human nature. You know what I mean? Tom Brady used to throw to Wes Welker because Wes was always going to be there, and at times he had Randy Moss, and Randy might be there or might not be there. And so there was a little bit of, of that. And so I think that's, if we could get Dalen, which he did practice today, and he looked good, if we could get him to practice consistently, and Chandler can develop some kind of rapport with him, then I anticipate him continuing to get better and better and having a chance to break out and really become a good player.
Do you guys eventually want to cut down the wide receiver rotation, or is it going to be this number?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just finding, 2 healthy guys to be able to put out there. And that's been a challenge in itself.
You mentioned last year, I know we in media and fans, but last year this, last year that, which is great.
Yeah.
Do you do that as a staff at all?
Not really. I think every year is different. That's the one thing that we told our players earlier. We said, we're not going to talk about last year, really. And we're going to try to learn from the success and the failures that we had. But this team is going to be completely different. And so, that's what I think young people have a difficult time understanding sometimes. I think that they think, well, we were 7-1, 8-1, whatever it was in 1-score games. We're just going to be that again this year. Just because we were that last year. And I think that that's not how it works. You have to, in our profession in football, you have to prove yourself every single day. You know what I mean? Nobody cares what happened last week. Nobody cares how many games you won. No one can ever get comfortable in this business. And the guys that do get comfortable are the ones that end up not being very good. That's what makes the great ones great, is every day they know. I mean, I remember hearing a Jerry Rice talk one time, and, you know, arguably the greatest receiver to ever play. And he talked about, you know, I came to work every single day afraid I was gonna lose my job. And I think that's the approach that you have to take, and every team has to feel that way. Those guys have to understand that what happened last year has no bearing on what's gonna happen now. And again, I think the only time we ever talk about it is when we say, okay, you know, here's what we learned last year that was beneficial, and here's the things that we learned last year that were negative, and let's learn from those. But there's not, we don't talk about it much, don't talk about it much as a staff, don't talk about it much as our players, and just because those guys need to understand every year is different.
Coach, you said after the game on Saturday that you might reassess some of the punt return game.
Yeah, we'll see. I think, you know, John Paul Richardson, you know, has had a pretty significant cut on his hand last week, and he'll probably get in the return game. And it's like everything. I mean, we're just gonna let some guys compete and see which guys we feel comfortable can catch the ball consistently and make good decisions back there, and that'll be the punt returner.
So you mentioned after the game as well, coaching and preparation as something that needed to improve. What's the process for that?
Yeah, I think the big thing is just, you know, is being, number one, it's like we've talked about before, you know, when this time last year, if you would have said, what's your leadership like on the team? I would have said, not very good. You know, and then if you'd asked me at the end of the year, what's the leadership like on the team? I would have said, outstanding, unbelievable, probably the best I've ever been around. And so what happens is, again, it's a moving target. And so for us, as coaches, it's kind of the same thing. You know, we have to go out and prove ourselves every single day, you know, and we have to assume nothing. We have to take every single moment and coaching opportunity and maximize it. And, you know, every rep is a chance to coach somebody and to get better and to learn something. And so, you know, I think that we've got to be, you know, better at the details. When your players are not good at the details, you don't blame the players. You say, we got to coach the details better. And that's the way it always has to work. You know, good coaches, their players play good. Guys that are average coaches, their players play average, and bad coaches, their players play bad. And so that's kind of the way we have to approach this thing is, look, you know, those guys are a product of us, and if we don't like you know, what we're getting on Saturday, then you better look in the mirror. You know, and it starts with you and it starts with me, you know, and I've got to do a better job of keeping our team calm, you know, and being confident. And that begins with me and has to feed off to our players. And if I have a sense of panic or I get upset or lose my mind, then it's going to permeate the team. And so I've got to do a better job of being a calming presence and focused and confident, you know, and that's because that filters down for me. And so that's, you know, I had to go home Saturday night, look in the mirror and assess myself and what can I do better, and then, you know, you work your way down from there.
We'll go 2 more questions.
Coach, what's it?
A lot's been made out of Kendall Briles and that first year. I know you're probably not thrilled with the execution all the time, but in terms, when you go back and look at, and grade things out.
Yeah.
Are you content with what's being called?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's early in the year. I think that same thing, we're still trying to kind of figure out who we are. And I think the thing that we have here is we have good enough players where these players can go and we can provide opportunities for them to make plays in a game, and they're good enough to be able to make those plays. I don't think we have to call touchdowns. You know what I'm saying? I think if you go back and you look at Saturday night, we scored 3 touchdowns, and none of them were some magical call. You know, we threw a dig to Dalen, and he turned it into a touchdown. We threw a dig, or a vertical route to John Paul, he turned it into a touchdown. You know, Chandler pulled his own read and turned it into a touchdown. And none of those are like called touchdowns. You know what I'm saying? And those were just guys that executed a call and are good football players. And so I think that that's kind of where we have to get to as an offense is let's make sure that we can execute things well enough where we let the players be good football players. And we're not so reliant on making, calling a touchdown. You know what I mean? And I think that's, every offensive coordinator wants to do that. And I think when it happens naturally, that's when you have something really good and something special. Because, what happens is, if you complete that pass, then you get the first down. And if you get a little bit better at that play, then maybe your tackle doesn't get beat inside and get pushed into the quarterback. Or, just the things that right now that have plagued us. And, we're 2 field goals away from, with an all Big 12 kicker, from overtime in 2 games, which potentially could have been wins and 5-0. But that doesn't matter, who cares? You know what I mean? And so, long story short, Kendall's really bright. I love what we're doing on offense. I wish we were a little better settled, but part of that's, there's a cavalcade of reasons why we're not. And part of that has been some personnel. There's just a lot of things that have kind of factored into it. But it's time. We're halfway through the season. It's time to get settled. It's time to execute. It's time to be able to execute in crunch time. And we've done that. We've executed well enough to score 42 points against Colorado and have a chance to win. And, even though we got shut out in the second half of a game last week, we still had a chance to win. And the difference is we didn't get it done. And so we have to figure out how to get it done.
We'll go one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go.
You got pretty hot at the officials.
Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah.
And there was only one other time last season, it was against Oklahoma, I think.
Yeah.
Do you ever get when it settles down, do you ever get a discourse? Do you ever get a chance?
No, I talked to those guys Sunday. Let me say this, the one thing I love about the Big 12 is I called Scott Draper, who's the assistant commissioner, on Sunday, and he had me on the phone with the guy that grades the officials in 5 minutes. It was everything you could ask for. And, we talked about it and kind of, sometimes we agree to disagree, and sometimes they say, yeah, look, they made a mistake. And the thing that I've got to do is understand I made plenty of mistakes in that game. So why would I hold the officials to a higher standard than I'm going to hold myself?
Yeah, will they own it though?
Yeah, it's hard to do. You know what I mean? It's hard for the conference to do that. To come out and criticize those guys every week publicly. And I've seen it happen before, but the thing is, you look at it and it's like, that will occasionally happen on like the last play of the game. But the problem is all of these plays matter. You guys know this. They're all important. They all matter. They all have an outcome in the game. But I'll say this league, in my opinion, does the best job of any league I've ever been around of communicating and holding those guys accountable. And so I'm very appreciative of that. Because again, that's all you can ask for. Sometimes you're going to disagree with the calls that are made, but I think the Big 12 and the leadership in the Big 12 really wants to get it right, and I think there is a high level of accountability.
Thanks, Coach.